Hi, welcome to the HYROX Life podcast. I'm Greg, and in today's episode, I get to speak with Peter Kelly. Peter is a great guy, a fantastic athlete. He's 62 years old and has raced in 7 HYROX events now, taking first place in his age group in 6 of those and second in the other one. He's competed at a high level in sport for most of his life, and we get to have a chat about so much, including his history, who inspires him, how he's adjusted his training as he's got older, his advice to others of a similar age who are interested in starting in the sport, and lots more. It's a fantastic conversation with a brilliant athlete and a genuinely wonderful and inspiring person. Just a quick reminder before we get into the episode, we do now offer truly personalised coaching plans to help you prepare for your next event, as well as nutrition calls for anyone who appreciates that fueling yourself properly for something like HYROX is incredibly important. If you want to find out more about those, head over to roxlife.com/coaching or roxlife.com/nutrition. Okay, so let's get into the show. Really hope you enjoy it. So it's we're 2-3 days after Manchester. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm not feeling too bad, thanks, Greg. I think it was a great event. Loved it. I found it a bit hot. I thought the venue was a bit warm. But I was struggling on Sunday with the DOMs, but trained Monday night, took it easy at the Forders HYROX class, and I just trained again this morning. I felt much better today. So yeah, I think I'm just about over it now.
Good. You're doing better than me then. I've still got DOMs. So do you feel like you're 62 now, right?
Yes.
Do you feel like you recover slower now? Is that something that you've noticed as you've got older or not?
Definitely. I think so. But as I've increased my training over the last 18 months and thought more carefully about my nutrition, particularly my protein intake, I've actually found that I'm starting to recover quicker than I was doing. So if we go back 18 months before I joined Forders, when I was perhaps running 2 or 3 times a week, then started to up my training, I was really struggling. I couldn't imagine ever being trained. I couldn't imagine that at 62 I'd be training 6 days a week with one double session. I just take one rest day. I'm still not quite sure whether I'd be better off training for 5 days and sticking in a couple, 2 sessions a day, perhaps twice, and then taking 2 days off. So I've not quite worked out what's ready, but there's no doubt that you feel the aches and pains a lot more. And I think the biggest challenge, because I tend to keep in touch with a lot of the guys around the world doing HYROX now, the guys in America, guys in Germany, and we sort of see what each other's doing in the training. And I think it's the most important thing is staying fit and healthy, because when you do get an injury, it certainly is it's harder to shake off. Even a small niggle can take you a few weeks, whereas years and years ago you'd have been over it in a couple of days. So yeah, there are some definite changes.
Yeah, sure. Okay. All right. If we'll get to the training maybe a bit more in a little bit, but should we just start for people that don't know you and so on? Can you tell us a bit about your background? What were you doing sport wise before HYROX?
Yeah, sport's been a major part of my life. There's no doubt about it. But I guess I need to keep this fairly short, because for me to go back to my school days, we'd be here all day. I think. But yeah, at school it was all about cross country and athletics. But my main love my main love really from about 10 years old through to my mid-40s was tennis. I was an absolute, a really keen tennis player. I used to play at county level. Played probably 5 or 6 days a week. Absolutely loved it. Then got a sort of slight shoulder injury, which really stopped me from doing the serves and smashes the way I'd like to be able to do. So then in my mid-40s, it sort of coincided with my daughter not needing me to take her swimming classes. I was taking her all over the Midlands swimming. So that's sort of with working full time as well. That really made training hard work. But when all that came to a stop, I could start to focus on what I like to do. So I got back into my running. And I guess since the age of 45, so probably the last 15 years or so, I've finished 11 Ironman races, 6 full, 5 half. I've taken part in 4 obstacle course racing world championships. I've represented Great Britain at triathlon and duathlon age group. This is and done many other sort of iconic races. I got into the likes of Tough Guy, in which is an obstacle course, which was the first obstacle course race in the world. I got into that about 15, 20 years ago, before obstacle course racing was even a sport, and really missed those days, missed those absolutely iconic starts. And I think we're doing things like Tough Guy as sort of, I got a passion for seeking out races more for the experience than for how I perform. So looking for real iconic starts, that's my happy place, is the start line. So I've probably been on 500 start lines in my life so far. So that's definitely my happy place.
Wow, nice. Okay, and then you found HYROX. How did you find that?
I found HYROX purely by chance. It was probably September 2021. I'd had a few injuries in 2020. Obviously, COVID hit. I was planning in 2020 to really have a good go at the Spartan races. I've done Spartan races over the years, but 2020 would have been my first year as a 60 plus, and Spartan just introduced that category. So COVID obviously made a mess of all that, and I was injured that year. So I came around to 2021 just doing some gentle running, nothing serious. And I was just on YouTube looking at some Spartan videos, and I came across Hunter McIntyre doing something called HYROX, and thought, what on earth is this? Of course, looked at it and just thought, wow, that just looks amazing. I've got to have a go at that. And literally, it was the weekend that London was the first London was taking part. So I decided to sign up for the Birmingham race, which was 4 weeks later. Although having never pulled a sled double, or that in my life, I think Birmingham was a bit of a shock to the system, but I absolutely loved it.
So is HYROX now your focus, would you say?
Oh, definitely for the moment, HYROX is my focus. I've done 7 now, and I think, and what really helped me was having done the Birmingham HYROX in 2021, which was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, because I'd not trained for it properly. My sports therapist, I'd told her about this event called HYROX, and she'd heard nothing about it. And then when I went to see her after the event, she told me, "Oh, I've met 2 or 3 guys that have been doing this thing called HYROX, and they all train at Forder's gym." Now, Forder's gym was 7 miles from where I live, and I'd lived in the area for 20 years and I never heard about it. Because it's a unique facility. I think you've got to, at the time, you had to be in the know to know where Forder's was, and of course everyone knows where Forder's is now. And so I came to Forder's, and then I could train specifically. They started a HYROX class on a Monday night, and following that, I do strength training twice a week. I've got just 3 months ago, I signed up for my first ever running coach, Richard. So Richard Taylor, he's doing a great job in helping my running. So yeah, to answer your question, I'm taking HYROX really seriously now, and I've qualified for the World Championships in May, and just can't wait, because there's so many guys now coming through in my age group. It started off 18 months ago, there were only 1 or 2 taking part, whereas I think in London there were 12 guys in my age group. But there's some really fast Germans. There's a guy in Ireland who's come from, just appeared, who's doing really well, and of course there's a load of guys in America as well. So it's just great to see that and of course the guys in the 55 to 59 age group, they're now moving up into the category. Some of them are getting older, so the competition is going to be absolutely fierce.
Yeah, it is. It's something that I'm noticing a lot, especially as I update the world records on the Rocks Life website. Like, you just see continuously these age group world records being broken, and people certainly in like your age group and slightly below, slightly above, like more and more athletes coming into it and setting times that are amazing, really, right?
Well, they are. I mean, I think in my age group, there's been 10 minutes knocked off the world record in the last sort of 4 or 5 months. And there's one or two guys still doing the pro division and knocking out some amazing times as well. So goodness knows what they can do when they drop down to the open weights, which of course is now the rule change at the World Championships. That's for all the 60 plus. We do the open weights, not the pro weights. So that makes it more inclusive.
Just on that topic, I think am I right in saying that you can choose to do the open weights or the pro weights at the Worlds?
Well, it's not absolutely clear. I mean, Mintra put out a YouTube video about 2 months ago, and I wasn't. I mean, what was very clear is they're going to be running an open wave. That's very clear, and I guess that's because more guys and girls are now qualifying in the doubles and mixed and stuff like. Well, the mixed is of course is the usual weight, but yeah, I'm not quite sure if they're going to run 2 races, and that will be interesting. It would seem strange if they do to run 2 races, 2 weights in one category, but perhaps for this season that might be the approach they take.
Okay, I'll try to find out for that. One thing I hope from this conversation is that that there are older athletes or older people that watch it that can be inspired to come into HYROX that are maybe nervous. So I don't only want to focus on some of the amazing times that we're seeing. If we go back to that first event that you did in Birmingham, you said it was like really, really tough. Talk about what was tough about it, but also maybe like if there is someone sitting at home watching this that maybe doesn't have such a sporting background as you, but are say around your age, what would you say to them about HYROX?
Well, the first thing I would say about anything, whether it's a HYROX or a local 10K or whatever you're thinking of doing, the first thing I'd say is just sign up, because I think too often people think about, I need to train for something before I do it. And of course, you can do it at your own pace. There's no cut-offs in HYROX. So I'd say sign up and then you can start your training. But don't let something like HYROX put you off, because I think, and I've read it before, you can arrive at a HYROX event and you can be sort of a little bit intimidated by some of the people on show and how fit they are. But actually, that's probably only 20% of the people there. And certainly, it's an event for everybody. So when I turned up in Birmingham, I did it on the back of probably been running 2 or 3 times a week. As I said, I went to CrossFit Solihull just to just to know what a ski erg was. I'd never seen a ski erg in my life. I'd never pushed a sled, and I didn't even manage to push a sled at CrossFit Solihull until they took all the weights off for me. I think I did 10 wall balls. So how was it for me? So it was a very painful experience, but it was an uplifting one as well. And to take part in an event like that with so many younger people I think it's just a privilege to be able to do it. And you once you've started, and you'll know this yourself, Greg, once you've started, no one knows if you're first or you're last, and no one really cares. And as soon as you realize that no one cares, you just get on and just do your best. But I did find the lunges. The lunges were just incredibly painful. I think I was crying through the lunges because you can't put the bag down. So I think I stopped. I don't know how long it took me, but it took me an awful long time. And the wall balls, I think after about 5 wall balls, they got me the box to sit, and they told me I couldn't sit. I thought it was for me to rest, but they said, no, you can't sit. This is just to check the movement. I thought it was something if I could have a sit and have a rest. And but I think the box made it worse, to be fair. But nonetheless, I got through the wall balls at my first HYROX, and I think it took me close on 12 minutes. And it really was a painful experience. But I remember I had one of my Ironman vests on at the time, and the volunteer was so good, and I was in deep pain. I was in a very dark place on the wall balls, and she said to me, "Flipping heck, if you can do an Ironman, you can certainly do these 100 wall balls." And so I had to have a word with myself. But I guess I find that almost every HYROX I do, there's some point where I sort of say to myself, why am I doing this? This is just so painful. And the same happened on Saturday. And then you've got to recalibrate and say to you, well, hang on a minute, I've trained for this. And I'm so lucky to be able to do this. So you have to have that strong word with yourself. And I'm sure everyone does it. because it is painful, and it doesn't matter how fit you are. So, so someone sitting here who perhaps doesn't think they're fit, I can assure them it's just as hard if you're super fit or you're not fit, because you just go at the pace you can go. But the volunteers are brilliant. They really are. I mean, the ones I've done one event in Munich, and they were fantastic over there. The ones in the UK are just amazing. They really encourage you. So I would just say to anyone sat at home thinking about something like this, just have a go. And I think it's a unique experience to do an event in such a big hall where everyone's so close knit and so tight together. Because normally if you go to a triathlon or even an OCR, you're outside. And of course, I must say my happy place is being outside. But the beauty of being inside at a HYROX is you're just so close to each other, and there's such enthusiasm and excitement. And I mean, I think if they could just, it's a bit like, I always think it's a bit like that film Monsters Inc. If you could actually just bottle all that enthusiasm and energy in a HYROX event, you could probably power a city for a week.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you're right. I agree. It's as hard as you make it. At the end of the day, most people can do the exercises. Like that's one beauty of it. It's not necessarily like CrossFit where there can be some technical things to do. And I know in another conversation I had with George Anderson, where we talked about mindset and things like that on this podcast, he talked about it's a very good way of testing yourself and pushing yourself and experiencing like that discomfort, but in the relatively safe boundaries of just a HYROX event. So it's quite a good way to get that experience without endangering yourself in a way.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think because when I got to my mid-40s, I don't know whether you'd call it a midlife crisis or not, but that's when I decided I needed to do some events that would take me out of my comfort zone, do something that's a little bit different, like open water swimming or whatever it might be. But yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at a HYROX, because you're in a safe environment and you can take as long as you want. And you get your patch at the end, you get on the finishers platform, and it's a great feeling. And it's funny, and even when you're doing, the number of times I've been doing a HYROX or another event, and you say, well, I'm never going to do one of these again. Why have I signed up? Why have I done it? And you literally feel the wall balls is the worst thing you've ever done. And then literally 5 minutes later, you say, I'm going to do another one of these. Yeah. And it's amazing how that pain is so short-lived. It's so intense at the time, but you just find a way, and you come out of it and realize, wow, and everyone should be so proud of themselves to do something like a HYROX. So proud.
Absolutely. Do you feel like HYROX is better or worse suited to an older person than some of the other stuff you've done? Like if you compare it to an Ironman or a Spartan or anything like that, or is it just different?
That's a really good question. I think for a HYROX, particularly because the movements are straightforward and it's a relatively shorter event than something like an Ironman, I think it's a good event too. But what I would say is that anyone watching this, if you've got the ability to finish up a HYROX and you can swim, you can do an Ironman. Absolutely 100%. I mean, I used to think anyone who did an Ironman was some amazing, amazing athlete. And of course, there are lots of amazing athletes that do Ironman, but it's so achievable, providing you've got the time and you can swim. You could even do the breaststroke, but it's just a long day at the office doing an Ironman. You do it. It's a zone 2 event, and providing you can get your head around that, and you're running zone 2, zone 3, which is so different from HYROX, where if you've got your MyZone belt, which I think we all should have by now, but if you've got your MyZone belt, you're going to be in the yellow and red throughout the whole event. Whereas you do an Ironman, you'll be blue and green because you've got to, because the event is so long. So I think then the only thing about the obstacle course races, perhaps for the older athlete, is the challenge of some of the movements, some of the monkey bars and stuff like that. So I've tried to keep going with the obstacle races, because I sense that perhaps that might be the first type of event that I'd have to stop doing because of the potential for injury. But having said that, it's not they're not that challenging, providing you've got a base level of fitness and strength.
Okay.
I'd say to everyone, have a go, do a Spartan sprint, do a triathlon, providing you can swim, do a triathlon, because a lot of them are pool. There's a lot of pool swims, so you can start off something quite modest and gentle. Do a pool swim triathlon, do a HYROX, and you just got to do it. Just do it while you can. You got to keep going.
Absolutely. Okay. If we look at your training a little bit, I know you at Folders, and they're probably writing some great programs for you and so on. And I know you've said to me in the past that some of the training volume and race volume that some of the elite guys are doing, you're just like, you can't get your head around, maybe, or you certainly couldn't do. What is your training volume like? Is that reduced as you've got older? I know you said you're doing 6 days a week, but is it high volume? Is it reduced volume now? What's it look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was doing Ironman, I was doing 15 to 20 hours a week, but it was all long, slow distance. And then my last Ironman was 2016, my last Ironman. And then I reduced my volume from there. But my volume now is no more than 10 hours a week, 8 to 10 hours a week, six days a week. So I do 2 strength sessions with Ash here at Folders. I do the HYROX class at Folders on a Monday night. So that's a high intensity session. And I do what I'd probably on a Sunday, I'd sort of do a skills session at the gym, where I might be just doing a bit of some compromise stuff, although I think I need to do more of that. And I do 3 runs a week. So I'm doing one, like a progressive run. So as I said earlier, I've signed up for a run coach for the first time in my life, and that's really challenged me, because I felt I know what I'm doing, but now every session I do is planned, so it's fully accountable. So all the stuff I've done in the past, I was doing really very much on my own, just reading up, no coaches, just doing it because I enjoy doing it, not necessarily for a time. I was doing it to complete events, because that I got a big buzz out of doing that. But I think I've taken HYROX much more seriously. So so Monday HYROX class, Tuesday strength session, Wednesday would be like a progressive run on the treadmill. So I've had some testing done. I've had my lactic blood test done by my coach, so he knows now where my lactic starts to build up and how much I can tolerate. So he now sets all my running sessions based around the times relating to that. Thursday I do another strength session and an easy run. Sometimes an easy bike. If I'm a bit fatigued, I might go on the bike instead. Take Friday off. Saturday will be a high intensity interval session on the treadmill, and he set me some brutal stuff to do. Or I might do a park run, something like that. I might do a park run, which I'd much rather do than a training session. The training I think everyone will know this. Treadmill running intervals are just a nightmare. But anyway, you've got to do them. And then, as I say, Sunday I might do a sort of skills type session. So yeah, so 6 days a week. To tolerate the volume a lot better now. And you've got to take the learning from all your events. And I'm getting to the stage now. Well, next week I'm sitting down with my strength coach, with Ash and with Rich, to look at my program from now to May, really, in terms of what do I need to change in terms of how I performed at Manchester. And I think really I need to do some more high intensity sessions. I need to do some more metcons and stuff like that. That's probably what's lacking a little bit in my training. And I think now I've got a stronger base, I might be able to tolerate that better. But the problem is recovering from the intensity. And going back to your earlier point, Greg, as you get older, how many intense sessions can you do a week? I certainly can't do 2 on successive days. And it's like looking at some of the elite guys. One of the guys here, Harry Bird, I think he did three pro races in 4 weeks in 3 different countries on 2 continents. Although I think he did tell me afterwards he did suffer a little bit from it, but he got faster on each. He got faster on each one. I mean, he's in his 20s, so again, you do have to adapt. You know, bearing in mind what your body can tolerate. But I think what I found now with doing strength work for over a year, I'm starting to tolerate this a lot better now. So I think that's why probably I'll look to change my training in a week's time once I've had a good chat with my coaches.
Okay, all right, great. I think I agree from what I've seen. Like, we're working with some athletes now, and certainly like the regular intense sessions are something that has to be generally paced out a bit more, for many of them anyway. But also coping with the intensity and the volume is something more for everyone, really, as opposed to just older people that just builds up over time. Even for me, like, I cope much better now with high volume than I did 2 years ago. You know, it's a gradual process at the end of the day, and it's probably not as quick as a lot of people would like it to be, but it's a process, you know.
It is. Well, everyone talks about consistency, and I think I'm starting to understand that myself now, that, you know, and having, and the difference for me is there's many occasions where I've not felt like training, and I guess years gone by I might have said, well, I don't need to train. I'll take the day off. I've just done a race a couple of days earlier, or whatever the reason might be. But when you've got your coach and the program, you're accountable, and you just turn up and you do it. So again, I that's been a big shift for me, a really big shift, and I absolutely love it. Because yeah, I'm always set stuff that I don't want to do.
Yeah. On the topic of like recovery and injury prevention, I guess, which comes into that, would you say your main tips, if you like, in that area are just handling the volume and the intensity more appropriately in your training, or is there anything else that you would advise over and above that you've found helps a lot for you?
I think you've got to think about your flexibility, and you've got to stretch a lot more than perhaps you ever used to do. So I think warming up is important. So I will always warm up before a session now. I'll always stretch really well at the end, and that's important. I think sleep, getting to bed at a decent time, getting a good night's sleep, nutrition. My wife cooks lovely food, so I'm very lucky. But yeah, you got to do your nutrition, and of course, something I was lacking was that my protein intake was nowhere near sufficient, and I've literally doubled my protein intake because it just wasn't enough for what I was doing, and I think that's helped enormously. And just generally looking after yourself and doing sensible things. And I rarely drink, and you as you said earlier, you don't recover as well, so you've got to look after yourself. You really do.
What's that? So you're doing all of this. You're doing all the training and recovering and everything. What is your goal for it all? Is it just because you enjoy it? Is it because you want to get better? Is it because you want a record? What's driving you?
I reckon it's all of those things. I absolutely once you get into something, I think, like I did Ironman for about 9 years, and of course racing, I do tend to sort of dip into something and then take it quite seriously. But I am competitive, and I think if you would ask any of the guys of my age around the world who are doing the HYROX, they've got a strong competitive edge, which is one they've had all their life. But it's just amazing to come down for the HYROX class here at Forders. There's 30, 40 of us, all ages. I guess the average age is probably mid to late 30s. And it's just great to train with these guys. You know, it just gives me a real buzz. And I feel I'm very lucky to be able to do it. I think I'm very blessed to be able to train. And I know that if I stop, I think the fear is if I stop doing what I'm doing, will I be able to get back onto it? And, and when I say stop, if I stop for 6, 12 months or something like that, how hard would it be to get back into where I am? And that doesn't mean to say that I'm going to keep this intensity going throughout the year, because I think the other thing is, I think there's a danger for everyone just to train, train, train. And you've got to find an off season. You've got to find, even if it's just a few weeks, where you're just ticking over, where you don't have your watch, you don't track what you're doing. It's really important to think about how you're going to balance it. You can't do it 52 weeks of the year. No one can do that. So I do worry that some people may be working that hard. But yeah, I've got a multitude of reasons. I absolutely love it. I get such a buzz out of taking part in these events. It's just amazing. And the fact that these age groups have, and again now, because if you go back 20 or so years, they didn't have quite the same age groups that they do now. And there's so many different sports you can do. Again, with social media, you can find a new event so quickly, whereas 20 odd years ago, apart from some runs and marathons and tough guys and the odd triathlon, there wasn't a lot of choice out there. But the choice now is just fantastic.
Yeah. I think you're probably quite an inspiration to a lot of people, and hopefully even more after we release this. But I know we've also talked about who some of your inspirations are in sport. Can you talk about some of those maybe a bit more?
I've got there's a lot of people that inspire me. There's no doubt about that. And whilst I absolutely admire the elites, and I'll perhaps come on to one or two of the elites in a moment, I'm more inspired by the ordinary person that does the extraordinary. So, for example, I mean, some people, some of your listeners may know of these people, but if not, I suggest they Google them and have a look at them, because once I got myself into triathlon, I was just doing short distance triathlons. And one night there was an article on Eurosport. It was about a lady called Sister Madonna Buddha. She was 81 years old. She must weigh about 50 to 55 kilograms. And she just completed the World Championships at Ironman in Kona, Hawaii, within the cutoff. And the big difference with Ironman and a marathon is that you have a cutoff. You start a marathon and you can walk it and you'll get your medal. But at Ironman, there's cutoffs all along. There's cutoffs on the swim. There's 2 or 3 cutoffs on the bike, 2 or 3 cutoffs on the run, so that they know that if you're still on the course, you'll finish within the allotted 17 hours. Because if you don't do that, you don't get a medal. So I thought to myself, well, if an 81-year-old nun can finish an Ironman in 17 hours, then surely I can do that. So I read up about Sister Madonna Buddha, and I really would encourage everyone to Google her. She's a phenomenal lady. I think she's done something like 25 to 30 Ironmans. I think she's now 92. I'm not quite sure what she's doing now, but she's certainly the oldest ever female finisher in an Ironman. So there's people like that do extraordinary things. And she only started running, I think, at the age of about 55, 56. And then by the age of 80, she'd done 20 or 30 full Ironmans. So I think everyone should look up Sister Madonna Buddha. And there's another inspiration that I have. It's from America. Rick and Dick Hoyt, known as Team Hoyt. Sadly, their father has recently passed away. He was in his 80s. But the son had cerebral palsy. And once he was able to communicate through a computer to his dad, and that took many, many years, he said he wanted to do a 5K. So the dad would put his son in like a pushchair, for want of a better word, and the dad, Dick Hoyt, would push him on a 5K. So they did a 5K, then they did a 10K, then they did a half marathon, and they were raising money for charity and stuff like this. Then they do the Boston Marathon. I think 35 Boston marathons later, they have a statue in Boston to Rick and Dick Hoyt. But they didn't finish there. They decided to do an Ironman. So if you could imagine the father, who must have been in his 40s at the time, starting off on the swim, he puts his son in a dinghy in the back. So the son is sat in a dinghy with a rope. The father then swims 2.4 miles in the sea, gets out at the end of the swim, picks his son up, pops him in the carriage at the front of they've transformed a special bike. The dad then cycles 112 miles with his son in at the front of the bike, get off the bike, puts him in a pushchair and pushes him for a marathon. And he finishes it within the 17 hours. Now, if you're not inspired by that, then you might as well give up. And there's a lot of the footage on YouTube is a little bit old, so it's a bit grainy, some of the footage. But I think Team Hoyt is something else. If you've never looked up Team Hoyt, look it up. It's absolutely amazing. It's very emotional as well. So yeah, these are the sort of people that inspire me.
Yeah, both of them amazing. You put me onto both of those, and I checked them out, and I agree they're amazing to see. So yeah, completely agree with that.
Yeah.
What's been your best experience in sport to date?
Well, I said earlier, to me, my happy place is the start line. And I guess over the last sort of 15 years, I've hunted out some what I would call iconic start lines. So you've got things like Tough Guy, which is sadly no more. And these are events before health and safety came in. So there was no wave start. So you'd start on the top of a hill, and 5,000 guys would run down a hill. And if you fall over, well, that's the end. That was pretty exciting. But there's Ironman Wales is very much up there. But I think without doubt, the best start that I've ever been on, the best race I've done, is Escape from Alcatraz in San Francisco, where they take 2,000 you out. They take you out in a big boat. They take everything out of the boat. 2,000 swimmers in the boat. 1,000 on the lower level. 1,000 on the top. You've got some Olympic medalists there as well. You've got everyone. And this is the beauty of Ironman. You've got Olympic gold medalists in the same race as the ordinary guy like me, and they take you out to Alcatraz, and you're not allowed to step on Alcatraz itself. So they switch the engines off at the boat. You've got to swim 1.5 miles back to San Francisco. So as you're going across in the boat, the captain is saying, "This is a one-way ticket, boys. I'm taking you out, but the only way you're going home tonight is by swimming across San Francisco Bay." So, start of the race, they play the American national anthem. They empty the boat in 7 minutes. It's like abandoned ship. So by the time the likes of me get to jump off, you can imagine the boat is so much lighter. You've got one hell of a jump to get into the water. But you sort of stand there. Well, you don't stand there because, to be fair, you've got about 2 seconds to make up your mind, because if you don't jump, someone's going to push you. But that is without doubt the most iconic race I've ever done. And you get halfway across, and they tell you just to stop for a moment in the water and look in front of you, and you've got the San Francisco skyline, and then you look 90 degrees to your right, and you've got the Golden Gate Bridge, and you look behind you, and there's Alcatraz, and you're in the middle of this water with 6 species of shark. You're told there's none that can eat you, but the thought the 6 species of shark does make you swim a little bit quicker. And there's 100 sort of boats in the water of varying sizes in case anyone gets into difficulty. There's helicopters overhead. So, that is what I would call an iconic start. And it's a 10 out of 10. There's no doubt about it. And then you swim to the shore, get on your bike, you do the bike, and then obviously you finish off with a run under the Golden Gate Bridge. And it's a relatively short race. It's not Ironman distance. It's only like an Olympic distance in a sense. But there's no doubt that is the most breathtaking race I've ever done. I think for triathletes, it's a bucket list. It's either Escape from Alcatraz or Kona. But of course, the World Championships, you've got to qualify for those.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. Is there anywhere you think HYROX could do one that would just, you'd say that's a 10 out of 10?
I don't know, because the only difference is at the moment HYROX is indoors. So I like my vitamin D. I like to get outside. That's where my happy place is. As much as I love HYROX, um, in terms of where could they do? I think they've talked about having one in Greece, haven't they?
They have, yeah. I was going to say that there's talk of the like the original Olympic Stadium in Athens. I don't know how realistic that is anymore, but I've certainly heard that mentioned.
Yeah, because of course Spartan, they have the race at Sparta, which is not one I've done and I would love to do, and that's obviously an iconic race. But yeah, I'm sure HYROX will come up with some amazing new venues. But the difference, as I say, to me, is unless they do them outside, the difference is you're in a hall.
Yeah.
But then that's one of everything's different, isn't it?
I guess there's one coming up in Miami that's partly on the beach.
Yes,
there's some vitamin D for you right there.
Yes, I guess.
Just before we finish up, I'm interested to know, we touched on the worlds earlier and moving to open weights for, I think it's for 60s and above. Are you happy with that move?
Well, I was training for the pro weights, but I'll be very honest. I'm happy with the open. I know it's the same for everybody, but I wasn't looking forward to doing the 9 kilogram wall ball and pushing that sled. Yeah, at Manchester, I'd entered the pro race because I thought we were going to be using the pro weights, but I switched back to open. I managed to do that in time. But yeah, I mean, I would have done the pro. I was. I think they've had the pro weights for the over 60s since they've done the World Championships at HYROX. So this is a significant change, but I think it's a more inclusive change because more and more. And I guess they want more people in the over 60 categories to race, particularly perhaps in the men's doubles and the ladies' doubles as well. You know, they're probably thinking there that they're getting more. They want to be more inclusive. And at the end of the day, it's the same for everybody. But I'm sure there'll be some people that are disappointed that they're not using the pro weights. And I know you're going to check out whether they'll actually have 2 races or not. But yeah, I think in terms of the impact on my body, I'm quite happy to stay with the open now.
Yeah. All right. Before we finish up, is there anything you wished I'd asked or wish we'd talked about?
No, I mean, no, not at all. I think the thing I would add is you know, when you talk about these inspirational athletes, I would like to see, and of course I'm biased towards Ironman, it goes without saying, but I would like to see some of the top elite Ironmen, such as a Jan Frodeno from Germany or a Kirsten Blumfeld, someone like that, have a go at a HYROX, give them 6 months to train and see what they can achieve. Because I do admire these guys that, you know, you take Hunter. I mean, Hunter was a top OCR athlete. He then is top HYROX. He's now looking to qualify for the Olympics, I believe, in the canoeing. He's trying different stuff, and of course he's at elite level. So I'd love to see. And of course, Hunter did an Ironman recently in Arizona, and he did a sub 11 hour, and I understand that he hardly trained for it, and that is a phenomenal time for someone to do on little or no training, because you need to be training for a good 12 months or longer to do an Ironman. But then when you consider these top Ironman athletes are running the marathon at sub 4-minute kilometer pace, the marathon after swimming 2.4 miles and cycling 112, they're doing sub 4-minute kilometer pace. So the engines that these guys have got are just on a different level. So yeah, I'd like to see some of these top pros from other sports come in, and I'm sure HYROX must be trying to manage something like that, and they'll probably put a big kitty up to attract some of these guys to do it. But yeah, that I'd like to see. I guess I'd like to see that.
Yeah, and hopefully as the sport grows and more money comes into it, then hopefully it will attract more of these people as well, right?
I'm sure it will. I'm sure it
Yeah.
will.
Yeah. All right. When's your next race?
Well, I'm down for Glasgow, although Glasgow coincides with my favourite race of the year, which is a fell race in Lancashire. So I'm torn at the moment. But do I do my favourite race, or do I go and do Glasgow? I have a feeling I might do Glasgow.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, I may see you there.
Yeah.
Thank you for this. I appreciate it. When I posted up on my stories that I was talking to you, there was a lot of love. People love you in the community. Like Ian Kay from the Fitness Racing Podcast said, you're one of the nicest guys he's ever met in the community. So thank you for this. There's like I say, yeah, people love you, and I appreciate everything you've done. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Greg. It's great to talk to you, and keep up your good work as well. We love all those stats.
I'll try. All right. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon, everyone. Take care.
Goodbye.